We're here to help you navigate your business growth with strategic conversations and insights from experts in multiple industries. Welcome to Wayfinding Growth.
This episode of Wayfinding Growth is brought to you by Sprocket Talk. If you're ready to take your HubSpot experience to a whole new level, you need to join Sprocket Talk as a free VIP member. That's right, free. Tutorials, courses, training, HubSpot updates, and so much more. Head to sprockettalk.com/WG to join the movement and get an exclusive Wayfinding Growth deal. Welcome to the show. I'm Dan.
And I'm Remington. On today's episode, we're talking with Bill Coletti, CEO and founder of Kith. Kith is a crisis communication and reputation management firm that Bill started just 5 years ago. They build, protect, or repair corporate reputations before, during, and after critical moments. So we unpack his journey and how reputation can affect your growth. So Dan, what did you love about this episode, sir?
So much.
You have to pick one.
I can't. Can we just do a whole recap, just like an hour? Man, so much. First of all, the word Kith, like that is a bonus at the end of this episode that you have to get to because that was really interesting. But my favorite
There's two
moment,
reasons, but yes.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. The surprise. Yeah. I won't say more about it. So my two, I'm only going to give two. So first of all, in order to think about reputation, you've got to get out of the crisis mindset. Well, this happened, so we have to blah, blah, blah. So you have to be aware. And Bill suggests a great exercise in that. Get your team together and look at current events and say, now, if that, air quotes, that, whatever that crisis is, happened to us, what would we do? Right? Get outside your industry and think about those things in current events. So do that as a regular practice. That'll help. And then I was very impressed by the unexpected shipwreck. When we ask all of our guests, about shipwrecks, it's always good, but this one was unexpected. So that was really good. So how about you, Remington? What did you get out of this one?
Yeah. So the intentionality just in general that his theme is that he has as he goes through is just amazing. But so he talks about 4 A's in his book, and you're going to have to listen to the episode to get those A's. But I thought it was a really unique perspective. He talked about brand versus reputation and who owns what. And then he also talked about that, like, being intentional about your reputation is earning the benefit of the doubt before a crisis. Right. So like, and I loved how he phrased it. Like, oh, that doesn't sound like them. Like, I can think of me actually saying those words to my wife when I saw or heard something that a brand might have done. Right. And then just the whole mindset of it being proactive versus reactive. Like, you hear reputation management and you think, oh, I got a bad review, I should fix it. And how he's bringing that across is so much more than reviews. So you definitely got to dig into this. This is going to be incredible.
And it all comes back to growth. I mean, it really does. Yeah. He talked about it. Reputation may not be a revenue bottom line thing, dollars for dollars.
Yeah.
But it's all about growth. So this is important.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Here it is, friends. Season 2, episode 22. Let's set that course for growth.
Woo!
So Bill Coletti, welcome to Wayfinding Growth. Thanks for making time.
So glad to be here. Looking forward to a great conversation.
Excellent.
Oh, man.
Remington, I'll let you take over, man. Why don't you kick us off?
Yeah. So welcome, Bill. Super stoked about this. I love that you've got a little bit of a sailing background here, so this is going to be even more fun. So cool. The first part of this is charting the course. So give us a little bit of background about who you are and like what got you to this point.
Yeah. Awesome question. I do love the thread that we'll pull through this whole conversation about sailing. So that'll be super cool. Yeah. On that. So grew up in St. Petersburg, Florida. I know you guys are hanging out down in that area generally. And so a little bit north of where you are, and started doing political campaigns early in my career. First campaign I ran was in high school, state Senate campaign in Pinellas County up in St. Pete. And then had a journey in politics for the next 15, 20 years, went to Florida State and Tallahassee, and then kept doing politics for a while. And in politics, it's sort of two main dynamic things. One is you're trying to create one more crisis for the other guy, and or you're trying to solve the crises that have been created for you. And you're kind of careening from guardrail to guardrail on crisis. And that's what politics is really all about. And so took those skill sets from crisis in campaigns and applied it in a corporate context, and did issues management, crisis and reputation management at a large global PR firm, and did that for 13 years, and ultimately wound up running their global crisis practice. And then so that's sort of my portfolio was North America, South America, and Asia. Didn't get to do much Europe, the way I divided it with a colleague. And then went on a journey of entrepreneurship and decided that I could build a better mousetrap and I could do it on my own. And sort of that classic entrepreneur's desire is that I can do it better. And so we've been doing it 5 years now. I've heard, and you guys can validate with clients in your own experience, if you make it past 3 years, you're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Anybody can kind of fake it for 3 years, but we've made payroll and grown for 5.
There you go.
And so now we do exclusively crisis communications and reputation management for companies that are smart, thoughtful, but find themselves at the intersection of public expectation and their actions. And that's where we live.
Awesome. So you had quite a journey there, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely a journey. I mean, the jumping off point from big firm where everything's provided for me, and I'm just sort of a business development engine, to having to run a firm, make payroll, think about branding, strategy, positioning, stuff like that. That's all was really, really new for me, because I fit within an infrastructure, and now the infrastructure is me. So that's been the entrepreneurial part's been the biggest journey.
That's interesting. So can you unpack that a little bit about did you expect those things, or were those things kind of, we'll just call it learned?
Yeah, learned. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely learned. So I was in this, and you guys probably have big firm experience or been in that ecosystem of the big firm. It's just things are in place, and there are people around you to make sure that if they aren't in place, they get put back in place. And both from travel to positioning to marketplace innovation, I did a lot of marketplace innovation, but whatever the thing was, other people did it. And so I just assumed, based at the outset, that my reputation and Rolodex was going to be worth X, and it was worth half of X, and which was good, because my X was aggressive, so half X actually worked out okay.
Sure.
So yeah, I learned the necessity of marketing. I learned the necessity of telling a story. I learned we really, as a firm, the big firm, we really kind of got off on the mystery of being difficult to find and being referral based exclusively. And we did sort of the obligatory industry stuff, but we didn't really market per se. And we just tried to rise above the din that was there. And as ultimately a 2-person firm and now a 6-person firm, you kind of got to mix it up a little bit, and you got to push. So it's comfort zone a lot for me. And I saw you guys have had some content about people doing it on stages, people doing it on podcasts, people doing that stuff I never had to do. Yeah. And now I, it's a thing for what I do.
Cool.
And you get to, right? That's the key.
That's and fun. Enjoy it. It's still referrals. I mean, referrals are, if you monetize what I do, it's 75 to 80% of revenue is referrals. I do all kinds of, what's that? You guys know better than me, but the old marketing sage is I do a whole lot of marketing, but I have no idea what works or something to that point.
50% of it's wasted. I just don't know which 50%.
Exactly.
Yep, absolutely. And Bill, you're also an author, and I've been enjoying the book Critical Moments. For viewers, you can see it, but it's called Critical Moments, the new mindset of reputation management. And in the book, I liked how you described something like a new policy rollout for a company should feel more like a product launch than what we typically do in order to help manage reputations. So very interesting perspective. Really like that part of it. And I have 2 questions from that. First of all, how critical is reputation management in that growth journey for a business, for you personally, for what you do? How important is that reputation in that?
So I think reputation's critical. And I think that at the simplest form, at the internet, you can go on Yelp or Glassdoor or whatever venue you want to talk about that you're interested in, someone's making an opinion and saying something about you. And so I firmly believe in this phrase is that a company owns its brand. Okay. And so we can unpack that, and you guys are experts at that. You can explain what that means to me, but a company owns its brand, but it's the public that owns its reputation.
I love
and
that.
so is that I articulate it, and I'll come back to that product launch in a second, but I articulate it that since a company owns its brand, there are levers, okay? And you guys do this with your clients. There are different throttles that they can, push or pull or change to impact brand. And if you're a retail store, you can change pricing or smell or sensory experience, whatever. So company owns that. But my perception, even though I'm not necessarily a Walmart shopper, but my perception of Walmart and their change of position on guns has so much more to do that with my belief and reputation and view of Walmart or Starbucks and the things that they've done than the flavor and the taste and the innovation of the coffee, or the flavor and the taste and the innovation of the store. As a consumer, as a customer, I've got a different mindset, but the public owns your reputation. And what that does, having a strong reputation, it gives you two things. One, in a crisis, you get the benefit of the doubt. All right. So if BP had a reservoir of goodwill and a reservoir, you get this benefit of the doubt. Where people say, well, that's not the company I know. And so Starbucks has stubbed their toe a couple times recently. And we all kind of, regardless of what you think of the coffee, everybody says, well, they're a pretty nice, innovative, thoughtful firm. And I don't think they're racists. They did some things that looked that way, but I don't think they're that way. So, the first thing you get in a strong reputation is that you get this benefit of the doubt that's there. But then you also get a license to operate, is that Chick-fil-A had a really hard time opening a San Francisco and New York City store because of their position on LGBTQ issues. And they didn't change their issues, but that is an example of their license to operate. They wanted to move to a new market, and city council said, whoa, let's hold on a second, and ultimately got the stores open, but it was expensive. Time or money, it was expensive to do that. So to do things that reputation does. Let me pause there, and then I want to go back to that product journey if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we'll go back to that for sure, because I find that really interesting too. So it sounds to me like you kind of separate brand and reputation, although they go hand in hand. So as somebody in a growth journey, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a C-level, whatever you are, that thinking of those two things concurrently but separately sounds like something that you would promote then, yeah?
Absolutely. And I think you have to think about them concurrently. And so I'll push the question back to you. Sales and marketing rolls off of lots of people's tongues synonymously. But I think my hunch is you would articulate they are two fundamentally different skill sets, experiences. And so I think brand and reputation need to be considered in that sort of same hand in glove. So do you agree that sales and marketing, while, put together as it rolls off our tongue, are very different disciplines?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's interesting because, I've been doing this a long time. I've always thought of reputation as part of brand. But if you talk about reputation management, I've always thought of that as a reactive rather than a proactive. So you're actually talking about this being proactive, which I think is really amazing. Yeah. And I think that if people focus about brand and culture the right way, that soul, if you will, is there, which seems to be very similar to how you are talking about things. But that's very interesting, perspective about how people can be more proactive, because I never even considered the benefit of the doubt side. That's freaking genius.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Tweetable. And I often think about it. So I think about it from an enterprise level. So I've mentioned Walmart, Starbucks, and BP. I don't do much work with Bob's Lumberyard or your local fill in the blank. So I don't do a lot of work in that space. But I think in a small microcosm, and you guys can help me with this because those may be some of your clients. I think in a small microcosm, having a really important reputation in your neighborhood, even though I might not need the services of Bob Lumberyard, I know that he helps the Boy Scouts, and I know that he treats his employees well. And I know that when there was a tornado, he donated supplies and is thoughtful about that stuff. That's not the universe I think in, but that's the distinction that I make between brand and reputation. And he may not sell more lumber, but the next time he wants to open a store out in the country and a legislator or elected official says, aren't you the guy that helped on the tornado? Aren't you the guy that did that to the Boy Scouts? That's reputation. He could have great product, great pricing, great inbound, great everything. drives customers, meets KPIs. But if nobody knows him, Joe's Lumberyard is cheaper, does better in the new market. So that is why I think about reputation. And now that cause and purpose and this new millennial generation, they're thinking about this stuff more than we used to think about it. So I do think they go hand in hand. And I'm increasingly bullish that it is at a startup, small and medium-sized business. It's not just the domain of enterprise.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. And then that's almost like a magnet of all magnets for even like acquisition of talent too.
Yes.
Because that same area. So we're actually experiencing that right now, which is fantastic. Dan and others that have joined on, but like, you know, like we come across as always being very helpful, putting it all out there, trying to, you know, help others as a brand, from a brand point of view, friendly. I think Dan and I are having a conversation, a 37-year-old, very helpful human, is like essentially how it comes across. But, but it's interesting to like break that out and think about that with that intentionality. I think that's brilliant. That's really awesome.
Yeah. And it's all about recruitment. The kids, you know, you mentioned marketing technology earlier, the kids that you guys are hiring care what you guys do with your off hours and your off assets and your off resources. And so we used to be like, you know, screw it, work harder. That doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, 100%. That's awesome.
It becomes this beautiful gray between off hours, on hours, culture, brand, everything. You know, it's life. Yeah.
You know, and I talked to you just to reference some great stuff you guys did. I saw or listened to a podcast you guys did about when the CEO is sick, something to that effect. And that's reputation thinking. Obviously there's an element of brand because you got to be able to meet the mail for your clients, but you're setting a culture and a tone with your employees that we care even if I've got the sniffles. And I don't know if you came to that point on the podcast, but that's the kind of thinking I'm thinking about.
That's awesome.
That's cool. Yeah. Thanks for referencing that. So then let's go back then. So we pause on that. Let's go back to this idea of reframing the typical, like, quote, air quotes, policy launch into this new way of thinking. How do you think of policy and culture as a product launch? Yeah.
So, you know, in the book, I talk about it, and the way I think about it is, and again, you guys are the brilliant marketers and know some of this stuff better than me, but if we're going to launch a new pair of sunglasses, there is a journey that people go on, from R&D to product market fit to we got to build a factory that can make this stuff. That's a well-worn path. And if you took any marketing class or any sort of business operations class, you were taught these 6, 12, whatever steps that were there. Too often when companies are dealing with big issues of LGBTQ or gun rights or parental leave policies, a corporate contribution to United Way, whatever, is that, to a point that you made earlier, it's typically like this crazy reaction. Oh my gosh, let's just write a bigger check. People think we're bad. Let's write a bigger check to United Way. People think we're evil. You know, let's just eliminate guns in the store. I think that same discipline that you would demand a client follow to introduce a new product, because you wouldn't let them just willy-nilly say, I want you to go sell this for me. Go sell it. Okay. I have no idea what it does or who it serves, or if there's a product market fit. You'd probably say, whoa, Trigger, maybe we should back up a little bit and go on a process. You know, who's the persona, all the stuff you know better than me.
Sure.
Policies, innovations, reputation building concepts should be held to that same rigor and standard. Now, it can still be agile, can still be fast. Walmart had the horrible shooting in El Paso at one of their stores, had a thoughtful process of where they then made a decision to no longer sell, ammunition, and then to ask their customers, their stakeholders, please don't walk in the store with an exposed gun. Is there. And so knowing those guys, they didn't do it exactly the way they introduce a new product, but it was a journey. It was a thoughtful process, as opposed to, oh my gosh, people think I'm a racist. Let's do something really, really unracist. Right. And that's not the way you would do it, and so we should be held to, the reputation world should be held to the same standards and conviction of the marketing world. And there's a whole nother riff there that I have about marketing and the marketing mindset and the communications mindset that we're happy to unpack as well. But yeah, I love the journey, and we need to have discipline.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's amazing. So if someone's thinking about managing their brand reputation more intentionally, it sounds, so where do you say that they start along with that? And then like, what are some tools or things that they should leverage?
Yeah, great question. So the concepts that I wrote in the book is this concept of the 4 A's of reputation management. Reputation management had never been an articulated discipline. And so if you go back, and hopefully you guys are going to nod your head when I mention the 4 P's of marketing. The 4 P's of marketing. And we can argue whether it's timely or not in a digital age or not. I think it's pretty durable. Price, product, place, promotion. It's pretty basic. And so reputation never had an articulation like the 4 P's did for brand, or 4 P's did for marketing. We now have the 4 A's for reputation. So the first step is this notion of awareness. And that's both a self-awareness of who you are as an organization. Can we actually pull this off? What do we stand for as an organization? So step 1 is awareness. Step 2 is assessment, is where clients and companies need to go ask their stakeholders. I don't think that marketing or reputation is truly rocket science. If we ask our stakeholders or ask our customers, what do you expect of us? What do you want us to do? They might say, Bob's Lumberyard, we don't care what your opinion is on LGBTQ. Starbucks, we do care. Let's ask. Let's ask people. So step 1 is awareness. It's about self-awareness, understanding your marketplace. 2 is this notion of assessment. Who can we ask both internally and externally, because employee ambassadors are critical. So that's the second layer. 3rd is authority. And authority is, some people argue, kind of oddly placed, but I think it's perfectly placed, is that most good reputation ideas die at the CMO's doorstep because the CEO isn't bought in. Because how does this drive revenue? How is this going to improve quarterly results? And am I going to sell more units because you write a check to the United Way, or because we make a position on a controversial issue that's there? And so if you don't have authority, which is the last step, which you can only get authority is that if you're aware and assessed, because they want to know what the marketplace thinks, you then get authority. You'll notice on the book cover, there's a hard blue line between action and authority. And, that is the barrier against guys like us, all 3 of us, is because too often with clients, agencies want to jump to action. Well, let's do this. If you do this, everything will be awesome. The blue line is there as kind of a consultant barrier, because if it's too many PR firms and too many marketing firms say, you need this campaign, go do this, go do that thing, and it'll be great. Unless you've come up through this journey of awareness, assessment, and authority, you can't do action. And the final step is action, where you actually then to begin to manifest and grow and pull on the levers that I talk about from a reputation management standpoint, that you pull on those levers for an organization that's there. So the process is this 4A journey that I articulate. I want to give you a very practical, tactical thing, is that if there's one takeaway that I want to see organizations read the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and ask themselves, if that had happened to us, what would we do? And so if you're Bob's Lumberyard and you look at the decision that Walmart made about guns, to say, what if we did that? That's it. 5 minutes in a staff meeting and just have a quick conversation about that. That is the best first step on that notion of awareness, to learn what you guys are culturally about. That's the first, easiest, best step. And you could do it in a reputation context, or you can do it in a crisis context. GM just had a strike. What if that had happened to us? Now, you guys probably aren't, your labor force isn't going to go out on strike one day, but hopefully cross your fingers.
Hopefully not.
Florida's a right to work state, so you're all good. And so but that's the simple thing that leaders, big or small, they need to say, read it in the paper and say, what if that had happened to us? What would we do?
That's great. That's a great call to action.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I would imagine anyway, reading those papers, knowing current events. I mean, just like reading every morning, those C-level people who do that, who get further in life, like it's kind of the same thing. Knowing current events, knowing what's going on, it's just going to help like your decision-making process in general, but being very purposeful about that. Man, that was great, Bill. I love that.
Yep.
So those navigational tools, then, I want to really promote the book. I'm enjoying reading it. I'd love to see it be one of those things that we do as a company, is like have a book club, and this is one of those, because this is really good. So definitely go.
We're starting one.
That's right. But we'll link to that in the show notes for sure. But I want to get personal. So I love thinking about this wayfinding idea, this navigational thing, this setting sail, right? I love this whole idea. I'm in Michigan. We're surrounded by the Great Lakes, so it's not the ocean, but it's still water. So I love water. It does. So Bill, I want to know, thinking back on your journey, whether you think of this in a reputation crisis framework or just your entrepreneurial journey in general, do you have shipwrecks you can look back on and say, man, I really learned this lesson from that? Like, what's one of your biggest shipwrecks, do you think?
Oh, yeah. Awesome. So twofold on that. I mean, my divorce, I was a bad husband. I was driven, corporate focused, rising up the chain, and felt my obligation was simply to bring home the bacon, and was a bad husband. And so that's a pretty big shipwreck. And so I think that's the journey. And so I think because of that, became so much more well-rounded and so much more crystal clear on my unique ability and what do I do really, really well. Therefore, allowing me time to grow and expand in other places that's there. So I think that's a critical shipwreck. I think the other thing is, on that journey, we, you move quickly through your career, you move quickly through life. You kind of step on some people along the way. And I think I've gotten a ton of awareness that I didn't get anywhere that I've been by myself. You got to have a little bit of confidence to do what I do and tell big companies what next step they need to take. But it is always a team. And so I think those two things, and they're interdependent, frankly, with each other, a sense of self-awareness. So I think those are kind of the two biggest shipwrecks that I've had. And then, early on in my entrepreneurial journey, Remington and I were talking about this a little bit, is that, I thought I wanted to be a HubSpot agency, and I just, wasn't a shipwreck. It was, I don't know the nautical metaphor, but it was a speed bump. And I'm like, what the hell? That is not what I'm built to do. I'm a wisdom giver, strategy advisor.
There you go.
I don't do the magic that you guys do. And so I don't know if I'd call it a shipwreck, but it was a 9-month waste of time, I guess.
I mean, that could be a shipwreck for sure, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, at least hit one of the buoys.
But there's this ribbon that's going through all of these episodes we've had this season, which is that self-awareness, which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Thanks
for sharing that.
And what an unexpected shipwreck. Like, I'm sorry that you went through that. I'm a survivor of divorce, for what better terms. But also, like, the growth that we have on the other side. I mean, my life is more charmed now than I ever thought possible. I think in part because of that.
Yeah, sure.
Which on one hand sucks, because I have a daughter who has to like navigate those waters now too. But what an unexpected great shipwreck that is. Great.
And I can't help it. So I am a sailor, and I love sailing, and I love sailing where Remington grew up, and so that's where I'm heading back. And so,
nice.
My journey on that, to exactly to your point, Dan, is my now fiance. She and I got engaged on a little place in Carriacou, just north of Grenada.
Nice.
I hope you're nodding your head there.
Yeah.
A little place called Sandy Island.
Cool.
And so beautiful, tiny little strip of land. And that is exactly where we got engaged. And then we continued a 7-day trip up and down up to the St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and then obviously back to Grenada. So absolutely more blessed in the second chapter. Had to drag my kids through some weird stuff. But everybody thinks that Debbie is amazing and that I'm incredibly fortunate, and she wants to sail. So that's even cooler.
Nice.
All good.
Look at you. Look at
good.
you. That's awesome. Carriacou. Good stuff.
Yeah, it's good stuff down there. Really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And that almost kind of leads into, like, it sounds like maybe it leads into this next question. One of your proudest moments. We talked about the shipwreck and what you learned. Maybe this is the proudest moment. So you sound pretty proud, but what is one of your proudest moments on your journey too, then, that you can kind of inspire other wayfinders with?
Yeah. That acceptance and understanding of self-awareness is what I'm most proud of. And so, I mean, I've climbed a mountain, I've ridden 100 miles on a bike, and I've sailed in some gnarly weather, and I'm getting remarried, and to have 2 amazing kids, and I wrote a book, and so blah, 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 whatever. The thing that I have the confidence without clutching to share those stories of self-awareness is it. I'm sure I can, balance a ball on my nose, and I'm really proud of that, but it's much better that I found some self-awareness to be able to talk about this as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. I can agree with that.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a theme we've got going through a lot of these interviews, which is fun. And we ask these questions, and it's so funny because when we design these questions, I think we expected it to be more the entrepreneur side, but it's amazing how personal and how self-reflective most of them have been, which I think is really important because, sometimes being an entrepreneur is a really lonely thing. So it's one of those things you really have to, one, have the confidence, but then 2, also have that self-awareness that, okay, I'm actually I don't suck too much today. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's great.
Great question.
So if you were a wayfinder for someone else starting their journey, what's the first piece of advice that you would give them?
So I love curiosity and be curious. I mean, I think people have to be curious. I think subject matter expertise in an ever complex world is critical. And that really requires you to dig down and deep into your subject matter area, whatever it is. But I think being curious about other things, other culture, other people, the lady at the Publix checkout stand, it's a Florida reference, the lady that's checking you out at the grocery store, being curious about them and people will make you so much more well-rounded. And I don't hire people for our firm, unless you've traveled internationally. It's just become a standard practice of mine. I don't know what it defines, but if you at least have the curiosity to search tickets that have 4 digits in it instead of 3 digits, and you're going to make a decision to go travel on a trip and you want to learn about a new culture, I think it says a lot about your curiosity. And so it's to me, my guidance to young people or folks that ask about starting their own firm is just be curious about yourself and about your environment.
Yeah. Great advice.
I love that. Now, does Canada count for international travel?
No. I did bingo in Windsor once, and so I don't think that counts for anybody.
I don't think so. No. Windsor is basically the nicer side of Detroit.
Exactly.
No, I'm just kidding. I love Detroit. That's awesome. That's good. Curiosity, man. That really does cover a whole lot, doesn't it? I mean, curiosity. Yeah, that's awesome, Bill.
Yeah, and I would venture to say when you guys said let's stand up a podcast, it was about curiosity. What's this thing going to become? We have no idea. We know we enjoy spending time together talking, and wouldn't it be fun to find a third person? But I'm curious if it is what you expected it to be.
Nope.
From day one. Yeah.
No, but what's fun is, so this being season 2, and Dan has been the proctor of season 2. It's been great. And so before we started this podcast, it was really amazing to me. Dan's like crazy podcaster. So like I think this is in his blood. For me, it was more of this, well, we should start a podcast with George, who was the previous co-host. And then I started actually listening. I listened to my first podcast after we did our first intro. And it really turned around to a point where now I'm absolutely obsessed. I do podcast roulette, I call it. And, but the amount that we learn just by interviewing and talking is just another avenue of consuming information. And I feel as entrepreneurs or as individuals, the more we consume, the more creative we can be. And I'm just obsessed with parallel markets too. So that's a big piece. So this is just amazing.
That's cool. That's great. Congratulations. It's awesome. Yeah. Just stick with it, because the dark days
at a time.
Yeah, the dark days in the beginning were like, other than your mom and your employees are listening, it's kind of a scary journey.
Right. Yeah. And so I'll weigh in on that one because I love that question. Thanks, Bill. It is what I thought it would be, but so much more. I knew going in, as we shifted focus a little bit from what it was in season 1, what it had become, which was still great, but very like marketing focused on growth. I knew coming in that talking to people outside of that would be different, and that would be extremely educational. I mean, I have my own personal podcast. I have almost 100 episodes of. So like I knew the value of spending 30 minutes, 60 minutes with somebody. I knew it would be amazing. But then on the flip side of that, interspersing every other week that it's just an internal, like we're going to look at Impulse, and for the most part, it's been just Remington, but we're also expanding to other team members. Like it's incredibly invigorating to work through these things.
Or therapy.
I was just, yep. Remington jokes that it's entrepreneur therapy.
Absolutely.
But it's fascinating. And it feels like developing a deeper relationship, which I hadn't even thought of until actually I'm answering that now. It feels like it would be so much harder for Remington to fire me because I'm his therapist, and like now we're tight, right? No, it deepens that relationship to be able to say, this is our podcast as a company. Everybody who listens to it gets to hear Remington's side of it, and then eventually gets to be a part of that voice. It's been incredible. So yeah, it's been what I thought, but so much more.
Yeah.
So
That's
anyway.
awesome. Congratulations, by the way. Congratulations. That's awesome. Awesome stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. So Bill, is there anything that we didn't ask you that you would want listeners and viewers to know, either about you, about the book, just about life in general? Anything we missed?
Yeah, not particularly. I mean, I think it's a rich conversation in its own right. We jumped into reputation management, and that's where we are, and that's where our evolution is as a firm. We started as firefighters. I mean, we do crisis, and folks call and they find themselves the worst day they're probably typically ever going to have. And that's when they call, and those are through referrals from people we've worked with in the past. I think it doesn't take a crisis, this sort of existential event that disrupts your company to its core. It doesn't take a crisis to go on a reputation journey. Simply the awareness of crisis of others. So in hindsight, I didn't need the crisis of divorce to go on that journey of self-awareness. I could have observed jurors, and that would be a sufficient catalyst to do it. Sure. So it's the same in a corporate context, is that, putting your head in the sand as a leader and saying, well, that can't happen to me, or I'm too small, or nobody cares about me. And if I do whatever, exactly, my little myopic world. So I think the logic arc that I'm working from a positioning standpoint as a firm, but it's also my personal belief, is that crisis doesn't have to be an event. Crisis can be an awareness of crisis around you. That then should send you on a reputation journey, because you want that license to operate, and you want that sort of reservoir of goodwill that's there. That's what you're ultimately looking for. But it all starts, in my experience, with either your personal crisis, a corporate crisis, or an awareness that it is possible.
That's good. I like that. Shouldn't
so
be an
much
event.
Gold in here.
Should be awareness. Yeah. Oh, for
so
sure.
much gold.
For sure. Well, this has been awesome, man. Thank you so much for taking time today to be on Wayfinding Growth. Where can our listeners and viewers find you? What's the best place to find you?
So our firm website is kith, kith.co, which is a bonus. We can sort of unpack what the word means in a second, but kith, kith.co. It's B Coletti on Twitter. And then I love LinkedIn. I'm all over LinkedIn. I try to post something there at least once a week, blogging content stuff that's there. So LinkedIn, Bill Coletti, the corporate website. And then I try to tweet every now and then.
There you
awesome.
Go.
Yeah. So let's get into. I am curious when we talked about. We mentioned in the intro with your company, but what is Kith?
So Kith is the name of our firm, and it's just Kith. We're not Kith Consulting. We're not Kith Communications. We are just Kith. And if we were gathering together in England and on a Friday afternoon, and one of us would say, "Yeah, I'm heading home to visit my kith and my kin, and my kin are my family, but your kith are your original friends that teach you sophisticated habits." So it's kind of like, think back to those guys in high school. They either had you try out for the football team, join the National Honor Society, smoke under the bleachers, whatever that OG, your original crowd, that's your kith. And so it has two meanings for us, is that we want to teach sophisticated habits to our clients, and we really only want to work with our friends and people that we like. And so we kind of have a no a-hole policy. And we don't work just for anybody. And so you got to be in our Kith for us to want to work with you. And so it's Kith and kin is where it comes from. Yeah.
I love how intentional your entire, just you are. Fantastic.
You. To break the intentional myth, and you guys will love this. If you've ever had a client design a website and you start banging on them, you got to come up with a name. You got to name it. You got to name it. And I was that client that said, no, I mean, whatever. That's the last, we got to make it look good. We'll figure it out. On a conference call with the web designer, and my screens, my MacBook Air flashed up my screensaver, word of the day or whatever I had setting I had it on, and it was Kith. And I control D Kith, and I said, oh crap, that's a cool word. There you go. So that's as unintentional intentionality you can get.
Well, you're owning it. So that's amazing.
That's awesome. The bonus part. Nobody knows that backstory.
Yeah. Well, now they do. That's great.
Man, that's good. Awesome, Bill. Well, thank you again. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation, man.
Yeah. Thanks, awesome. Guys. And congratulations for all you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, please share it. Post it, tweet it, gram it, email a friend. Give the gift of knowledge to someone you know that could benefit from it. And if you really loved it, please consider leaving a rating and written review on your podcast player of choice. And as always, go to wayfindinggrowth.com for resources and past episodes. Remember, we're here to help you navigate your business growth with strategic conversations and insights from experts in multiple industries. Thank you for listening to Wayfinding Growth.